Plunge into this. Absolutely everybody is constantly worried about whether or not we're celebrating Christmas correctly, which is a kind of interesting problem. It's like saying there should be a correct celebration. There is a correct celebration. We're not doing it right because, we focus too much on Santa, right? And therefore that makes it the inappropriate Christmas celebration. I mean, there's often the claim that they're pagan. Okay, so fine. If they're pagan, how old are they? Just say 1850 and you're safe, right? So almost all of the things that we now associate with Christmas in the Anglophone world, which is the one that we're dealing with primarily right now, because we always end up in these conversations in the Anglophone world, come from, interestingly, two literary pieces. One, The Night Before Christmas, which was first written in 1822 and first published in 1823. What I'm showing here is a Harper's New Monthly magazine running it in 1857. 'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. If you've ever doubted the importance of poetry, you should know that the reason that we celebrate Christmas in the way that we do now is because Clement Clarke Moore wrote this in anapestic right? It's the trippity, 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 trip. And that poem has created for most English-speaking people the image that we have of Santa Claus, which we're going to get back to. But if you have any image of Santa Claus as a jolly old elf and stuff like that, thank Clement Clarke Moore and his little, I'll let you guess. The other image that we have, the strongest possible image that we have of what the real meaning of Christmas is.
Oh, the Scrooge.
Yes. So the Father Christmas that we have is the Santa Claus we have is a blend of the Father Christmas character that appears in Dickens' A Christmas Carol, plus Moore's St. Nicholas in The Night Before Christmas. Why would these guys be writing A Visit from St. Nick and A Christmas Carol in the early 19th century, do you think? And they've basically created the entire mythology that we celebrate in the Anglophone world around present giving, the real meaning of Christmas. There's actually a Wikipedia entry on the phrase, the real meaning of Christmas. You will not be surprised to learn that it's post both of these works. Right? It's like the real meaning of Christmas is a thing that becomes people obsessed with in the late 19th century.
Well, what was happening in England at that time?
Industrial Revolution.
Religious expression.
The Industrial Revolution was happening at that time. Protestantism had been the primary mode of worship since Henry VIII stole all the property from the monasteries.
So the Protestants that created factories and pushed all of the people into factories.
Like Bob Cratchit and his Tiny Tim.
They needed to be reminded about Christmas and Christmas being a holy day. Or people who owned those factories wanted to sell some things.
Well, both of those things. So there's a really great book on the history of Christmas by Stanley Nussbaum, which talks about how in the early 19th century, you have book publishers particularly starting to sell Christmas books, right? It's like you'll sell a special Christmas collection, but blame the publishers for making it all so commercial. But you have, what's interesting about the early 19th century is up to that point, the celebration of Christmas had kind of been dying out, especially in English-speaking countries, because, well, guess what? Particularly in the Civil War in the 17th century, so for some period under Cromwell, Christmas was illegal. This is the funny thing about saying to Anglophone people, it's like, Christmas is too commercial. Well, you got what you wanted. Yeah. The Protestants wanted December 25th to be just like any other day. They wanted to be a regular old market day. And guess what? You got it. So if you're not Catholic, you don't have anything to complain about, because as far as the Protestants were concerned, it wasn't really a holiday in the first place. We'll get to why. But that's, I mean, the sort of irony in in American culture that we're complaining about being so commercialized. The New England Puritans didn't even celebrate Christmas. In Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, he has this whole meditation on, learning to pray and stuff like that. December 25th isn't even marked in his diary, because December 25th, as far as the Protestants were concerned, particularly the Puritans were concerned, was not a Christian feast. So if you're worried about Christmas not having any real meaning, guess what? You're already Catholic. Yeah. Because Protestants, you shouldn't be celebrating in the first place. As far as you're concerned, it's pagan and you shouldn't have it. No, but what's funny, so Anne Barnhart did a really nice essay on the Christmas Carol, and Scrooge is definitely a problem because he may be kind of Jewish in his money lending, and the Dickens may be showing something that's happening in the 19th century that we are not supposed to talk about. But what's interesting about A Christmas Carol is it creates what for most English people feels like an old-fashioned Christmas. And that image of here's Father Christmas and we're going to celebrate what Christmas really was like is an utter fantasy. It never was quite like what it's shown to be in Dickens' story, because he's creating it in the 19th century in the form that we now celebrate it. So if you're worried about Christmas being pagan, welcome to modernity. Any questions? Boom shakallah, as Mel says. Well, so Washington Irving helped popularize it too, but we have this, the 19th century in the English-speaking world needs new stories. And between The Night Before Christmas and A Christmas Carol, we got our new stories. And so basically what we're celebrating in the Norman Rockwell version of Christmas, here's the dad worrying about how to decorate the Christmas tree and stuff, is a feature of the success of both the poem and the story, right? Which is therefore, a great testament to the power of literature, but is also a great testament to the ability of cultures to invent traditions when they've actually lost touch with where they thought the reason that, it's like, why are we worried about the real meaning of Christmas all the time? It's because in fact we've lost touch with the medieval tradition that developed it, and therefore we don't know. So if you're worried about all of our modern celebrations, including these trees, which we'll get to, as being pagan, it's a modern phenomenon of worship. It's not pagan. It's not pagan in the 4th century or the 8th century. It's literally 19th century. So you could say it's pagan because it's Enlightenment, but it's not pagan because it comes from the antiquity.
Well, then you're attributing paganism to Protestantism in a strange way.
Well, as we should, because the Protestants are the ones that are worried about paganism and worried about how Catholicism had, as far as the Protestants were concerned, absorbed all of this paganism, that the Protestants were convinced they could purify out of Christianity, including purifying out the celebration of our Lord's Nativity. It's really clear they didn't. And the best proof that we have of that is, in fact, the Gospels. And this is where I get very, very impatient, because all of this argument about why do we celebrate Christmas always revolves around is the date, right? You got the date wrong. Are you kidding me? Why do you care about the date? Why do you care about the date so much?
Well, it's an argument over time and how we define time.
Yep.
And why we define it the way we define it. So my instinct is to say that it's the argument over our Christian understanding of time versus the non-Christian version, or versions, because there are multiple.
Christians care about time, right? And this is what I'm showing now is Mary being enrolled in the census, right? Long before we have, nobody disagrees that the Gospels are the oldest text that we have other than Paul's letters. If you think Christianity depends on the Scriptures and you think it depends on what it says in the Gospels, you have to account for the fact that it includes an effort at dating. In the year of when Quirinius was governor of Syria. Why say that? Who cares if it's wrong? Why say it at all?
They wanted to anchor the narrative of the Gospels in the overall historical narrative.
They care about time in a way nobody ever had, because they care about the incarnation. So that we end up in these arguments about the date is in fact proof that it matters, right? Which is sort of glorious and silly, right? It's like, oh, you got the date wrong. Why do you care so much about the date, eh? Why do you care that we got the date wrong? You think we could get it right? Maybe we could. It could be any time in the year, and you'd still argue over it because it matters. It could be March 1st. It could be sometime in July. It could be sometime in September, and you'd still argue over it. It doesn't. Sol Invictus is a complete red herring. It makes zero difference. What matters is that we care about the entry of God into time, and so we do argue about the date. Back to those marvelous monks who are worrying about exactly when Easter should be.
Okay, but this is the key point here. It's that Christians care about this because we care about when God entered into time.
Yep.
Which is not a perspective that is shared by all, to acknowledge that is actually what happened at the incarnation and at the nativity.
Isn't that great? The reason we argue about it all the time, the reason people care so much about proving it's pagan or not, is because it matters, but not because the actual 25th matters. It's because time matters. If you're arguing about the date, you're already in it. You already care. You already care that this is a historical event that we can date accurately. And if we moved the festival to March 1st, you'd still be arguing about it, about that sun. Here we have in Santa Maria Maggiore, the coming of the three wise men, which we probably need to talk about, which is about those gifts. But I want to go to the sun now. I am showing an image of the zodiac with all of its little creatures, with Cancer and the twins and Aries and fish and, the water bearer and Libra and all that. And there's an image of the sun in the middle with a chariot, right? It's clearly the sun. He's got 4 horses. He's a chariot. Guess where this is?
Is it in Germany?
No. Ooh.
Is it Rome?
No, it's not in Rome.
I don't know.
Keep guessing. Keep them guessing. Everybody else can see it. You're having to remember what I showed you. Where is it? So we are told that worrying about the sun is pagan. It's pagan. We're going to prove to you that Christ wasn't born on December 25th because that's the feast of the sun. And therefore it cannot be the feast of your Savior. Whose mosaic is this? I sound very menacing, don't I?
It's so stressful. I have no idea where it is.
Well, there's an alphabet in the image. We've got Ken and Casey watching. Casey, in the fullness of time is kind of a big deal in Christianity. Yes. Ken, Saturn was a wistful, nostalgic remnant of the Golden Age. Yeah, we can still talk about that. That the people looking can see the captions over these creatures who are the creatures of the zodiac. They can also see some angels in the corners. It's very clearly the sun in the center. Mel, Jews. It's in the synagogue. It's in the Beth Alpha synagogue in Israel. It's the sun. Now, I say Psalm 18 every morning because it describes the sun coming forth from his bridal chamber like a giant running his course. Guess who wrote that psalm? It's insanity and silliness to claim that the Israelites did not have solar imagery in their own worship. It's silly. Christ is, of course, the sun because it's in the Psalms. And we say the Psalm 18 as the birth of Christ from the tabernacle, his mother, because this sun imagery is also part of the temple tradition. And so this weird effort to, purge all paganism from Christianity is simply purging its own tradition from Christianity. Mm-hmm. It's a synagogue, yeah. It's apparently a synagogue early, more recent than the celebration of Christmas. So apparently the Jews in Beth Aleph in Israel still put the sun in the center of their imagery. It's a sign of the times, and the time is also part of the temple worship. It's in there in the Psalms.
The Son of Righteousness.
Yep. So really, guys, it's not a big own to say that Christ is the Son, because he is.
So Christmas is a religious war.
Yes. This is a spoiler alert. The debate over Christmas is never going to end because the debate over Christmas is actually the problem of Christianity, right? We're going to have to keep debating it. So you guys, all we're doing right now is arming you for next year because it's always going to happen. What's the fuss? It's really, we are called to have this debate regularly. And well, we're going to show you what it really is, but that you're worried about it being pagan is weirdly enough a feature of the stripping away of the tradition and its reinvention in the 19th century.